From monsters and ghosts to otherworldly beings, join the Explorers as they venture into the darkest realms, seeking the truth to what goes bump in the night.
Good evening and welcome to Explorers Seekers of the Truth, episode 30. I am, of course, Chad Charlesworth, and as always, I'm joined by my best friend and co-host, Lesson Cabbage. How are you doing there, Squirt?
It's the circle of life. Apparently, I hit the wrong song on my phone.
The scary thing is, I do understand probably why you have that song on your phone. But the fact that was your go-to song to open the show.
Well, you know, what was weird is I have our intro song or theme, whatever you want to call it, queued, and I hit play. And for some reason, it started with the Lion King theme. I don't know. It's a cluster F of a night, I tell you, as usual for me. Hey, Ricky, thanks for joining in, buddy. Good to see you. So I'll go through the usual. You can reach us at our website, www.explorersgroup.com. You can find us on Twitter at Explorers Group, here on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Explorers Group. And we're on iTunes and other Instagram, all at Explorers Group, so you can find us there. And you know, when I'm doing a show and I get thirsty, nothing quenches my thirst like a good bottle of Squirt.
Product placement. I hope they paid you for that.
Oh, I know. You know, it's funny because it's like when you buy a new car and you never see that car that you bought any other time before you bought it. Then you buy it and you see them everywhere. I get called the name Squirt by a Bigfoot Bibler, if you will, and now I find stuff with Squirt written on it everywhere, and I had to get a bottle of Squirt just for the sake of the name.
I don't think I've had a bottle of Squirt in probably quite a few years.
Oh man, I tell you what, the way it squirts in your mouth is so quenching. Oh, but anyways, hey Paul, thanks for joining in, brother. Anyway.
So tonight we're going to discuss a bipedal, hair-covered cryptid of a different type. Mm-hmm. Not Bigfoot. Perhaps a smaller, lesser-known cousin, the Orang Pendek.
Mm-hmm. That's right, Chad. Tonight we will travel to the mountainous forests in the Indonesian island of Sumatra, where there's a creature known to the natives as the Orang Pendek, or short person once translated. In comparison to its North American cousin, the Sasquatch, it's also referred to as Littlefoot due to its shorter stature of only 30 to 60 inches tall. And it's said that the local tribes and villages have documented the creature for at least the last 100 years. It's also said that Dutch colonists and Western scientists have reported witnessing the creature as well. So, you know, there's, I guess, not saying that the natives or the villagers aren't credible, but I mean, you know, there were at least some scientific minds, if you will, that had been there and saw something that was out of the ordinary. So that's kind of interesting. And covered in short fur, this bipedal primate is suggested to be primarily ground-dwelling, foraging from the forest floor, like fallen fruits and nuts, and it seems to be, based off of eyewitnesses' reports, primarily herbivorous. So, but I'm sure there might be some protein thrown in there because, you know, like other great apes, like the chimpanzees and stuff, will actually hunt monkeys through the trees and stuff like that and eat them. So they're I guess more omnivorous than herbivores, but you know, fun fact. You know.
Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
You are coming in digital on my end. I don't know why.
Oh no. That's not good.
Yeah.
Hello, Jennifer. Good to see you. All the way from Arkansas. That's awesome.
How do I sound?
You sound perfect.
Okay, I'll keep going then. If you can't understand me, like let me know.
Well, how do I sound to everybody out there? Are we coming in clear, or is it all kind of distorted? Can anybody write in the comments? Let us know if we're coming in clear or not. That's the thing about BeLive. The hosting app that we use is sometimes when like I didn't have enough time to log in, I was late again as usual. But sometimes when we first log in, we get a real bad staticky or digital sound. All right, Dave says loud and clear. All right, well, are you okay with hearing me like this? I guess there's really not much we could do at this point other than end the broadcast and start it over again.
No, you're coming in crystal clear again. I don't know if it's something down here with the weather or what, but get back to the subject now. It is said that the Orang Pendek has a divergent.
I don't mean to cut you off, but did you read what David wrote? Chad's a tad muffled, but I think it's a muskrat on his face. That's good. That's comedy right there. Oh, Paul says the video was cutting in and out a little bit, but well, hopefully it reset itself. I know sometimes with BeLive there's kind of a lag, and sometimes it needs to catch up with itself. I don't know if it's a bandwidth issue or what, but I don't know. One of these days we're going to find a better platform that isn't so shitty like this one. But anyways, back to the show. I'm sorry, everybody. We kept getting cut off there.
Okay. So what I was saying is it has a divergent big toe, meaning it's separated from the other toes, kind of similar to our thumb, how it separates from the fingers. Now, the common coloration of the Orang Pendek ranges from a blackish brown, red and brown, golden brown, yellow, and orange. They're said to be short-legged with long, powerful arms. They are sometimes seen in trees and have inverted feet, thought to hide the direction of which they're traveling. That, I don't know, sometimes stuff like that kind of seems a little far-fetched and speculative in that end. Now, the
almost like grasping at straws to come up with something to set it apart from something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that sounds typical primate. If you think about it, the back feet are usually turned in a little bit because they're usually used for grasping and climbing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it has it has yet to be fully documented, and there's no authoritative, account of its behavior, physical characteristics. However, there are, eyewitness reports, and some of these characteristics, consistently come up in these reports. So it's likely a picture of an animal that kind of is conjectured together. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. This word in this translation from this native group means this, but when you go to another native group, it translates to something a little different, but yet it's along the same lines.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny because the descriptions that you're giving or the characteristics that you mentioned are extremely consistent with the arboreal creatures that spend more time in trees than ground dwelling. I mean, even the fur colors are consistent with like an orangutan, and even the name is close too. If you think about it, like the Orang Pendek, orangutan, and I wonder, I don't know. It just seems too primate to me with those descriptions, even the divergent toe.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny that you had mentioned that because, another species of the great native to the Indonesian and Malaysian area that are found, mostly in the rainforests of Borneo and Sumatra is in fact the orangutan, which translates, the name actually translates to person of the forest. What's even more kind of interesting in that end is there's actually 3 species of orangutan classified in the genus Pogo: the Bornean, the Sumatran, and the Tapanuli orangutan.
Oh, the Tapanuli, or something like that, right?
Something along those lines. If you need me to read all this, Greek wording,
no.
I'm not translating too hard here. And, perhaps in reality, Orang Pendek is simply just a mistaken, young male or female orangutan. Or perhaps it could be an yet undiscovered subspecies or a fourth variant of the species altogether.
That's interesting too, because if you look at the Borneo, the Sumatran, and the Tapanuli, I want to say the Borneo variant is they have like the big cheek pouches or like the puffy cheeks, like the grown males. And then the Sumatran one has a little bit less, and then the third one, the males are almost more like the females. They don't have that big kind of facial distinction that the Borneo males have. So again, could people just and if you think about it, in the zoos and in the books and stuff like that, you more commonly see the male orangutan with the bigger head, the bigger cheeks and stuff like that, just overall bigger. So the Borneo version or variant, I think, is more commonplace in the education system and in zoos. So if you're out there and you see like a mature male of one of the other variants, it's bigger than the females. It looks different. It looks like an orangutan, but doesn't look like a female one. It doesn't really look like the male ones I see in the books, but this one is different. So could that be?
Oh yeah. I mean, have you ever gotten up close to one?
Yeah, actually, when we were down at the, was it the Philly Zoo? They have a great ape exhibit, and they have a big male orangutan there, and dude, that thing was impressive.
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually at the Waco Zoo, I got to see 3 different orangutan, and one of them was actually some kind of crossbreed that they accidentally created. They didn't realize the difference at that point when it was bred, and they actually bred this kind of hybrid, and it is one of the now orangutans are considered one of the most intelligent of the great apes, and just watching it when they feed it and stuff like that, the one, and how it knows like different intelligent ways of doing things, to the point where you can kind of watch it using things like stones and stuff like that to kind of grind stuff and crack it. So they're known, to kind of have an ability to use tools and kind of the nests that they sleep in. They're very elaborate sleeping nests. They had some photos and stuff in one of their exhibits of the sleeping nest, and so they're very intelligent. And when you look at this description, shorter legs, big powerful arms. When you look at them, it kind of fits, but also it's a culture that would have grown in a parallel with them. So they would know of them and know what they are and kind of have an idea of, okay, that is, that's one of them, compared to identifying it as a completely separate species. You might not be able to tell the difference between, A, B, and C, but they would at least know that A, B, and C kind of look alike. There's some structural differences, but they also realize people look different. Some people don't have teeth and have raspy voices, and other people have, sweet angelic voices. And, some people have red hair, some people have brown hair, some people have black hair, but they know they're people. So it kind of it gives me a little bit of, as somebody who enjoys learning about this stuff and everything, it kind of does interest me that, like I said, the people would understand toothless people and people with teeth, people with different color hair and stuff like that. So for them to say that this could be something, or they say it is something different than the things that they already know of. And, the apes have been studied extensively for their, learning ability and stuff like that. Many have even distinctive cultures within their populations.
Right.
So to say that the Orang Pendeks, would stand out from the intelligent wise, maybe not be as solid of a case as one might think. But did you just run at me?
I said, uh-huh.
Oh, it sounded like you grunted. I was like, are we...
There you go. That's good.
So
well, it's funny, like you were talking... that you nailed that impression. When you were talking about like the apes' intelligence and stuff like that, I had seen the one time on, I want to say it was Nat Geo, they were doing tests on great ape intelligence, and it was like this little screen and a dot would show up, and the monkey had to go back, or the chimpanzee actually, and they did a chimpanzee and an orangutan, and they had to watch the dots where they showed up, and then touch the spots in the exact order as they had seen them, more or less to test memory and coordination and stuff like that. And every time the apes nailed it, and they were given a treat reward. They had people test it, and they almost failed every time. But it was funny because younger kids scored better than the adults.
Mm-hmm.
But even still, the great apes beat out humans every time.
Well, I think at the Waco Zoo, one of the things that they did as a study was they put a vending machine in one of the habitats for the monkeys. And what they were doing was they taught the monkeys, and I say monkeys, apes, primates, what the different foods were in the machine, and then showed them how many tokens it took to get that specific food.
Mm-hmm.
And when they would do good stuff, they would give them a token. Like if they did, certain things, if they came when they were called, they got a token.
Right.
If they, did this or went along willingly to do some kind of testing, they would give them like 2 tokens.
Mm-hmm.
And they set up the machine that it was like, say, 4 tokens for grapes.
Right.
Well, these things would behave so well to get 4 tokens, and they would run over and put 4 tokens in the grape thing and hit the button, and the grapes would fall out. They did it with, like other food sources that they enjoy, and they would do stuff, get the tokens, and run over and actually put the tokens in the machine, push the right button, and then pull them out and start going to eat them. I mean, that's a form of intelligence. It's not just like, it knows how to operate a basic machine. It understood that my behavior gets rewarded, and when I get rewarded, I get this thing that gives me the big reward of food.
Right.
So it's kind of showing multiple layers of intelligence.
Right, and even knowing enough how many tokens it needed to get that reward.
Yeah, and that was the thing. It wasn't like it would go over there with 2 tokens, put 2 tokens in, and start pushing the button trying to get grapes at 4 tokens. Mm-hmm. Right. It would wait until it got 4 tokens and then go over and put 4 tokens in, push the button. If it wanted, banana or some kind of leaf that they also had in there, and it was like, say, 1 for a leaf, it would take 1 single token, walk over and put it in the machine and get that leaf. So apes, primates and all that do have a great level of intelligence, and it's a multiple level intelligence. It's not, it can do this, like they've taught sign language and stuff like that. They're finding more and more different, levels of intelligence where they're teaching it how to use machinery and memory and cognitive, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Which again, too, the Orang Pendek, Sasquatch, other humanoid or humanid creatures that are thought to exist. Sorry, that squirt's making me burp.
Squirt burps.
Yeah, squirt burps. But people say, about their intelligence and how they know how to avoid people and this and that. And I mean, even some other just common animals like that we have in certain areas, like deer and coyotes, and they learn where to go and where not to go and when to avoid, and they learn certain things. So yeah, I have no doubt in my mind that these creatures, if they do exist, would have enough intelligence to know, all right, well, when I'm around these creatures, bad things happen,
Mm-hmm.
and who's to say that, let's just say hypothetical, a Sasquatch sees people hunting, it realizes what it could do with the weapons and whatnot. So it's like, all right, I know to avoid this animal. So, but back to the topic, like we were saying that, given the orangutan is a possible or a likely misidentification of the Orang Pendek, let's discuss some other creatures, or better yet, let's discuss some human relatives that this cryptid creature could be or could have descended from. And I know we brought this name up a few times in past shows, but within Indonesia's island chains lives the island of Flores. And it's located about 1,400 miles southeast of Sumatra. And I want to say in 2003 at Lingbo, the remains of an individual were discovered, and they were dubbed the Hobbit. Homo floresiensis, or the Flores man, measured out to a whopping 3'7" tall, and partial skeletons of 9 individuals were actually excavated from one of these cave systems on that island. And including in that excavation was an intact skull. And this was thought to be enough to represent a distinct species due to the genetic and anatomical differences. And what's interesting is they survived up until only 12,000 years ago. Now, further testing is suggesting that they went extinct long before that. But then again, it could just be that they had survived for, let's just say a 1,000,000-year period. Because some creatures from the Ice Age, like the Smilodon, the saber-toothed tiger, the short-faced bear, they were around for like 2 million years. They might have gone extinct, 100,000 to 200,000 years ago, but they were around for a long period of time. So let's just say the last or the youngest, I should say, time period would be 12,000 years ago. They found some, bones and whatnot from that time period. But let's say these creatures or these beings use these cave systems. They had burial, rituals and stuff like that. So they buried their dead within the cave systems. And that was going on for eons. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not saying that they went extinct, 100 or 300,000 years ago or whatever, that maybe that they've just been tending to their dead. Because I mean, Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, even Australopithecus was thought to have burial ceremonies, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways,
can I bring up something there? Kind of put something in my head. We're going off of like carbon dating that they're saying is 12,000 years ago. That's from what we can find right now. But what if they changed their burial ritual? what if they no longer buried the people? What if they became a culture that cremation became, or put into the ocean? So
That's true.
therefore, 12,000 years ago, say there's this belief shift in this population, and with that new belief structure, all of a sudden we no longer bury our dead. We do the Viking funeral, per se, put them on a raft, light the raft on fire as it's going out, and return them to the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Or cremate them and you sprinkle their ashes through the forest. That it's the circle. Oh my God, it's the circle of life.
Hey, look at that. That
Brought it
song
right
was
back around to the
fitting.
beginning of the show. See how I did that?
Yeah, it was perfect. And if you think about it too, like here, I'll bring up a picture. To the left is Sumatra. Follow that dotted line down to the island of Flores. Let's say, go back 100,000 years, maybe these island chains were more connected. And let's say the Floresiensis people were all along or all throughout the main island, or had started somewhere else and ended up in Flores. That's not that far. 1,400 miles really isn't that far. It's like hiking the Appalachian Trail. And back then, ancient people, prehistoric people, they got around a lot better than we do, and
well, even with that, if they became capable of seafaring, if you hug the coastline from one island to the next island to the next island, you could be spreading your population. That 1,400 miles, you could spread your population in a year or two to those different islands, and start, if they weren't already inhabited. If they were inhabited, their islands, how did the people get there? They had to come from one of the many migrations in human, or the Hobbit, culture. They would have had to come from somewhere and migrated to those areas.
That's true. Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is, I mean, it's not a big. Sorry, I was reading something on the side there. It's not a big distance. It's not a big gap, and I mean, it's not uncommon for primitive man to travel between island groups. So I wouldn't doubt that it's a possibility. So, and again, 12,000 years ago, in the grand scheme of time, is a drop in the bucket. Mm-hmm. And considering the amount of islands which hold slightly altered variations of the same or similar species like the orangutan, is it possible that the Flores man had branched out and continued to survive and still exists today in Sumatra? You know what I mean? So I guess I lost where I was there. I'm trying to find my notes here. But anyway, so if you look at the reconstruction of female skull of the Homo floresiensis, I'm stumbling over that word, I apologize, and based off of it's the most intact skull. So they did a recreation, and I'll bring the picture up, but let me grab that picture. So this is a reconstruction based off of the intact skull. And you can see it's still very ape-like, similar to the appearance and or the descriptions of the Orang Pendek, right? Mm-hmm. And you can see that it had, anatomical similarities as the Australopithecus as well. So we're looking at primitive man, or what primitive man could have looked like. So there was another artist that did a rendering of it, which is here, right? Added more hair, gave it a little bit more of a personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that looks very, very close to a lot of the descriptions of the Orang Pendek, right? So let's take it a step further. Okay. Add more hair to it. Based off of the Homo floresiensis, this was a reproduction or reconstruction, I should say. And they were calling it the Orang Pendek.
Okay.
Right? And the Orang Pendek comes in a variety of different colors. So this could be a black variant of the fur. So Homo floresiensis looks like a Orang Pendek to me, based off of the information we, researched, and other explorers and whatnot are saying that they've seen.
Yeah, there's definitely some similarities, and eyewitness testimony is faulty at best most times. But again, it's one of those things too, like words translate differently. So descriptions, the brow may be a little fuller, the hair may be a little thicker, on the face, but not as thick on the, on another description, it's not as thick, But look at humans. I mean, you and I both have beards. Mine is thicker. Yours is more shaved down and neater, trimmed. If somebody, an alien saw the two of us, you have red hair, I have black and grayish hair.
Yeah.
They're going to look and go, well, there's a group of them that have red hair. There's a group of them that have like this black salt and pepper hair. There's a group, that have this. But if you started compiling it, when you start drawing, hey, your squirt's rolling away.
I know. Yeah, it fell off the desk.
Yeah. So you start compiling, these different eyewitness accounts. You're going to have some variant in the amount of hair, where the hair was,
Well, even skin color and everything too. I mean, if you think about the human race, I mean, there's a lot of variety.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. So, as an outsider looking just at us, us in particular, we're all human. We all share common ancestors for the most part, from what genetics says. So, at a certain point, we're all the same, but yet our description is all different. Like I said earlier, some people have, raspy voices, stuff like that. And so therefore descriptions are going to vary. So yeah, they kind of all three kind of roll into the same thing, the same creature. And, again, it's artistic renderings. Well, I'm going to put more hair on its head and around its eyes than you're going to. You're going to, do a little more cleaner, look to it. I'm going to use hair to fill in the spots where I have imperfections. So that's a very interesting, thought on it, being that.
Right. And Cleo, I see you posted a question there, and I don't want to leave you hanging. Sorry, we're in that. I want to say that the earliest claims of humans using or controlling fire was like 1 million to like 0.2 million years ago. According to Wikipedia, I guess, is 1.7 to 0.2 million years ago. And I believe it was Homo erectus that was the first, they theorize was the first of the Homo genus that first learned to control fire. And it just branched down from Homo erectus to like Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon and all the other branches thereafter. So there you go. But and there's some other creatures that can be part of the mistaken identity of the Orang Pendek. We talked about or the orangutan. We talked about the Floors man, the Hobbit, Floresiensis. But there are others. For instance, many locals say the Orang Pendek's feet look like those of like a 7-year-old child, and that they know this because of the footprints they found while walking through the forest. But there are other forest-dwelling animals that have similar foot patterns or shapes, like the sun bear. The hind leg or the hind foot of the sun bear is very reminiscent to that of a human footprint, and the sun bear is smaller, so it's going to look like, a tinier foot. And then bears in general are known for having feet like humans, like I said, and the sun bears would match a child fairly well. So could the Orang Pendek be nothing but the product of mistaken identity, applied to the imaginative human mind? After all, and like gibbons and other kind of monkeys who populate the forest in this area are known to occasionally descend to the ground and walk for a few seconds on two legs bipedally. So, and if you've ever seen a gibbon, they're kind of odd looking, they do have a human-esque face, and they're taller, long-armed and stuff, but they're not very broad. They're really lanky. But still, if you saw one walking around, it would look pretty weird, just walking around on 2 feet.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting that there are so many primates and like the bear and the gibbons and orangutan and all these different primates and bears and animals that when you think of the thing everybody tells you that Bigfoot is, or the skunk ape, or different stuff like that, it's always, oh, it's a bear. It's a bear walking on its hind legs. It's a mistaken identity of a bear.
Yeah.
Even though the people's descriptions, again, eyewitness testimony isn't the greatest in that situation. But the fact that it's always pointed to certain things, the skunk ape, but it's an escaped orangutan, or other zoo animal type primate.
Well, yeah, especially down in Florida with all the hurricanes and stuff, all those private zoos and whatnot, they all got torn apart and the animals take off, Yeah. You see one of them in your backyard, like, you don't expect it,
Yeah, but these people would have, like I said again, they would have paralleled, existence on the islands with these creatures. So it wouldn't have been a new experience unless these creatures, the different gibbons and stuff like that, maybe had moved to other areas on the islands away from the people, and the people maybe had moved back into those areas. But it would be that would be harder for me to buy into.
Yeah.
With that.
Well, yeah, because like you think of like the locals and whatnot, they're going to know. It's just like us. Like, we know what animals are common in our areas. We see them often. We know, even the ones that you don't see often, what they look like. And, the locals there are, in the bush all the time. They're in the jungle. That's their life. That's their habitat, so they know what's around them. So I can't see how these people that have been there for, millennia would have a mistaken identity. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's kind of my point on is the parallel growth of the people on those islands and the knowledge of the known species on that island. Unless somebody brought something in that wasn't native. Again, like the whole, Florida end of it. If somebody brought in or the big cats, out of place animals in England, unless somebody brought a primate that isn't known to those people and it escaped, and then all of a sudden they're misidentifying that as a folkloric creature or cryptid in that in sense of it's not a known species for here, so it's got to be the Orang Pendek, and they give it a name and kind of different descriptions develop. But then again, the amount of colorization of the fur and stuff like that, the hair, that would be harder if it was a single escaped primate.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't fit, because you're not going to see gold to black and identify, oh, it was golden. Well, the one I saw was blackish brown. That would be harder to get that level of cross identifications with different colorization and stuff like that.
Right.
Now, I'm kind of gonna pull something up here and ramble about it for a couple minutes. There's a thing called Foster's Rule. Okay, Foster's Rule is basically insular dwarfism.
Mm-hmm.
Because of this island chain being smaller in the sense of land mass, available food, if this is a cryptid in the grand scheme of unknown animals, undiscovered species, and we have in Europe and North America and Central America, Asia, Australia, we all have a Sasquatch type creature, a Yowie, a Yeren, a Yeti, a Bigfoot, Sasquatch, skunk ape. Mm-hmm. If applying Foster's Rule to the general, I'm going to use Bigfoot as the general umbrella for all large bipedal humanistic kind of large undiscovered primate. We're just going to go with Bigfoot. If you follow Foster's Rule, if one of these creatures or a breeding population of these creatures wandered onto that island chain, within a few generations, they would shrink down. Now, they wouldn't go from 7 foot to 3 foot in 2 or 3 generations. But as competition would also be increasing as mankind started wandering onto these islands, and the food sources now start to dwindle because there's more man than Orang Pendek at that point. Mm-hmm. They would start even getting smaller. Now you come to North America, Asia, Australia, and you start looking at the Sasquatch or Bigfoot descriptions. Oh, they're 7 foot tall, 8 foot tall. I've heard them as high as 19 foot tall. Wherever you fall on the actual height. The first thing I would have to say is most people don't know how tall 7 foot is. Mm-hmm. I had the fortune when I was younger, I was fortunate enough to have been around a lot of professional basketball players.
Right.
And when I was 13 and was 5 foot something, standing next to people that were 6'10", 6'11", 7'3", 7'4", it was a great difference when my appreciation of a 7-footer was greater. Now I'm 6'2". When I stand around people, I know they're taller than me. You get to somebody who's 7'2", that's a foot taller than me.
Right.
But if I'm looking at them, I just know they're taller than me. My natural thing is going to overestimate their height.
Right.
Oh, they had to be almost 8 foot tall. Well, why would you say almost 8 foot tall? Well, they were taller than me, and they had to be a foot and a half taller than me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't have a reference point for that. And if you start looking at some of the more recent Bigfoot sightings in areas, there have been a lot more on it was 6 foot something.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't quite 7 foot, as the North American, the Australian, the European, and the Asian Bigfoot type creatures have been forced into smaller and smaller habitats. Are they suffering from insular dwarfism, where their food sources and stuff are getting smaller? Orang Pendek, this may have happened 12,000 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
that they had to become these 3 foot tall bipedal creatures
Right.
instead of a 6 foot, 7 foot tall creature.
Well, there were where the Floors man was discovered. There were a lot of different animals that were off from what they are more commonly known or commonly sized at now. Like there was the dwarf elephant, but then there was a giant rat that was like your standard rat, but it was bigger than a beaver. Mm-hmm. You had storks that were ridiculously massive. But then you had other animals on the island that were typically really large that were really small,
Mm-hmm.
like the Floors man or the Homo floresiensis. I mean, if you ask me, I would say that if the Orang Pendek is real, it would be a variant or the descending or living relatives of the Floors man.
Mm-hmm. Well, descendants of the Floors man, but then you almost have to look where the Floors man came from.
An even smaller island.
Or is it, insular dwarfism, where they actually came from one of the, mainland parts of Asia, and as they got onto these islands, got smaller.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that stayed in the mainland areas got bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And, changed. Because even look at the actual height of people in Malaysia and Indonesia, Indochina areas.
They're shorter.
Indonesia, the average height for the average height for a man is under 5'4".
Yeah.
Average height for a woman is 4'11".
Mm-hmm.
Average height in America for a man is like 5'10"-ish.
Yeah.
A woman 5'4", 5'5".
Yeah.
Yeah. So our males in North America are 6 inches taller on average.
Yeah. Yeah.
Than these people that live on an island. And that has been shown, Foster's rule has been shown over the years. It's also called the island effect. If you don't, want to go with Foster's rule, it's the island effect. And it's been shown, there's dinosaurs that got caught out on these islands.
Isn't that like Haggart's Island or something like that? Or something with an H?
Haddock Island. There was, dinosaurs that got caught out there that actually were smaller than their mainland ancestors. Yet they're the same dinosaur. They're just pygmy, in a sense. There's a lot of different ones over the years where they have found this Foster's rule actually playing out in nature. There's a Kangaroo Island emu that went extinct about 1827-ish.
Mm-hmm.
That was an example of this in more modern terms, where people can see the difference from an island version of this species to the more mainland versions. The size difference was very noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
So it always, that kind of made me wonder, and kind of got me thinking along that line of, if there is a large bipedal primate creature out there, we always talk about how every culture has a reference to this, and the size is a little bit different here to there. Weight, height, proportion is always a little different. But we always say, well, the environment affects it. Well, that's truly what Foster's rule is. Really, the explanation for all that is, if you're in an area that requires you to be shorter, more dense, and maneuverable through lower areas, that's how your body is going to, over generations, become. If you're in an area that is more open and has a higher food source and less predators, well, you're going to grow bigger. If you had humans of some form and the Orang Pendeks, which say it is a Bigfoot type creature, the competition would have been on a smaller island, would be tremendous for the food, for water. So now all of a sudden the competition's there. So all of a sudden this creature starts getting smaller. If you notice, the people are even smaller, naturally smaller. Now you have like Floors Man, they're a smaller even yet version of man. So that kind of got me thinking about Foster's rule and stuff like that, and how it
makes sense.
Affects the different animals and creatures. But
so let's move along and talk about some eyewitness stories. What do you have about that?
From the orangpendek.org, there are a couple different variants on witnesses here. And basically what they're saying is they divide their witnesses of the Orang Pendek into 4 groups. The Sukyu Anak Delum group, which is the people who live in the forest throughout their history. They stay away from towns and cities. Then there are the local villagers who are in the smaller hamlets and stuff like that in towns. Then there are the Dutch settlers of the early 20th century. And the 4th category they run with is the more recent Western people as witnesses. So the first group, the people who stay out in the forest, Orang Pendek has been part of the Suk Anak Delum world for centuries. As long as the outsiders have been documenting their culture, the forest-dwelling tribes have described the animal as a co-inhabitant of the forest. They know when they are entering and leaving Orang Pendek's territory, and will often leave offerings of tobacco to keep it happy. One local villager, it makes me happy. Give me a cigar and I'm good. These Indonesians provide by far the largest wealth of lore and information we have on the Orang Pendek. Everyone knows someone who has seen the animal, and it seems everyone has heard all of the stories. This can be a disadvantage to our gathering of information because most people seem to have adopted into their own belief a common story about the Orang Pendek. For instance, many people we ask about the animal say its feet are put on backwards. So when it walks, no one knows which way it's moving. We consider this description like the highly unlikely and use them as indications of whether the witnesses are speaking from personal or collective experience. In general, we find it difficult to decide what to make of the group of witnesses. While they are by far the most numerous and therefore likely group to have seen what we are searching for, and provide very convincing, realistic, detailed descriptions, they also share a strong tradition of mythology, oriented view of the world. Many people we talk to ask us earnestly if we are afraid of ghosts while traveling in the jungle.
Mm-hmm. So they seem very superstitious, the local villagers.
Yeah, which that also, one of the things I like that they point out in there is the collective folklore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're told the story enough times and then you hear a new story about the same. Yes, R2?
Sorry, that was my phone.
If you hear the stories like about a forest,
Mm-hmm.
and you know your family had grown up around that forest, and they tell you a story about this and this and this, and then you talk to somebody who maybe lived a couple of miles over, and all of a sudden they tell you a story. Well, now all of a sudden you start adapting parts of their story. They start adapting parts of your story, and now you have this common folklore story.
Mm-hmm.
Where the truth has become less important than the scare factor of it, or the importance of the creature in your culture has kind of been boosted up in that way.
Right.
Now this brings us to our next group, which would be the Dutch settlers. In the early 1900s, Indonesia was actually a Dutch colony. If you traveled in Indonesia today, you'll see Dutch influences everywhere, from the architecture to the Indonesian language itself. A few settlers provided Westerners with their first introductions to Orang Pendeks, as they described several first and second-hand experiences with the animal.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it, R2! Among the most famous of these witnesses was a man named Mr. Van Herwoorden, who, while surveying some of the land in Sumatra in 1923, describes this encounter. I discovered a dark and hairy creature on a branch.
That's pretty good.
Sorry, I had to move my notes here. It was hairy on the front of its body. The color was a little lighter than. It was a little lighter on its back than on the front. The very dark hair on its head fell to just below the shoulder blades, or even almost to the waist. Had it been standing, its arms would have reached to a little bit above its knees. They were therefore long, but its legs seemed to be rather short. I did not see its feet, but I did see some toes, which were shaped in a very normal manner. There was nothing repulsive or ugly about its face, nor was it at all ape-like. Now that's interesting. I mean, not the way I read it, but it's interesting. Because, like he says, he didn't see its feet, but he did see some of the toes.
Right, right.
But if you also, when he describes it, it wasn't standing, so it was on a branch. And if you think about what we had said earlier, was he just basically describing an orangutan?
Pretty much. I mean, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Now, I have a second firsthand story here. I love Dutch last names. Another man, Mr. Otising, describes
Oosting.
another. Okay, yeah, oosting.
I was just getting my Dutch on.
Well, I'm from Holland. Isn't that weird?
I love gold.
Described another first-hand encounter with a strange animal. While walking through the forest, he saw what looked like a man sitting on a log, facing away from him. I saw that he had short hair, cut short, I thought, and suddenly I realized that his neck was oddly leathery and extremely filthy. That chap got a very dirty and wrinkled neck, I said to myself. His body was as large as a medium-sized native's. Sorry, my stupid virus thing just popped up. Medium-sized natives, and he had thick, square shoulders, not sloping at all. He seemed to be quite as tall as I. Then I saw that it was not a man. It was not an orangutan. I had seen one of those large apes a short time before. It was more likely a monstrous large cymag.
That's another kind of primate on the island.
But a cymang has long hair, and there was no doubt it had short hair. So there's a guy who had recently seen an orangutan and knew that what he was looking at, to the best of his knowledge, was not that. But
right,
though he does offer up another known
primate
species on that island.
Yeah, just bigger.
Yeah.
Now he does say monstrously large. So I mean, it's definitely out of its normal characteristics, but still able to be identified as one.
Yeah. But then again, the hair too. The hair was short.
Mm-hmm.
But this thing, evidently, they usually have longer hair.
Could have had mange, and it was kind of just kicked out of the troop.
Yeah. Or
that's not uncommon, you know what I mean, with primates and even other animals that travel in groups. When one becomes diseased in some sort of a way, a lot of time they're kind of excommunicated, or you know what I mean, to prevent the spread of whatever they have to the rest of the group.
Yeah, that could be, and then that also goes back to a lot of these sightings of other cryptids. Oh, it's just this with mange.
Yeah.
Now, these accounts are poorly documented. The witnesses obviously cannot be questioned further, and the descriptions they give differ significantly in some respects from the consensus of the recent witnesses. But regardless of how believable they are, these stories provide another piece of the complicated puzzle of the Orang Pendeks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this brings us to the more recent Westerner reports.
Mm-hmm.
As Western scientists ourselves, the group of witnesses provide us with the most accessible source of evidence. Most notable among this group are two British researchers, Debbie Martyr and Jeremy Holden. Both have been working more or less continuously to photograph Orang Pendek since 1990. And of course, so far without success. Both also claim to have seen an Orang Pendek personally on several occasions.
Mm-hmm.
Through their project Orang Pendeks, funded by Fauna and Flora International, which you can visit at www.faunalineFlora.org. Dash. It's not a line, it's a dash, folks. Debbie and Jeremy have engaged in a multi-year effort, in part to systematically categorize local lore and witnesses of Orang Pendeks, and B, to employ camera trap methods to capture a picture of the animal. Their efforts and ultimately frustrations have been a valuable source of the expertise and caution for us. Several other Brits have been involved themselves briefly in the search with no conclusive results. Adam Davies, Adam Sanderson are two of these, who recently received some press coverage from the BBC after finding a footprint and hair that may have been from Orang Pendeks. Interesting. The group that is there working, now they personally claim to have seen Orang Pendeks on several occasions, yet have no photo, no video, nothing more than, oh yeah, we saw them.
Right.
You get that like Adam Davies and Adam Sanderson, now they have, found a footprint and have found some hair samples.
Which I actually have a picture of that. Let me bring it up. Yeah. This is the supposed cast or Orang Pendek cast of Orang Pendek footprint. Looks very primate to me, although the thumb or the big toe, the divergent toe there that you can see kind of halfway down looks really, really short. I mean, even though it is the foot, well, I would assume it's the foot. Usually the toe is outstretched a little bit more, but I could be wrong. And maybe this is an indication of evolution, actually, that maybe the toe is almost starting to remove itself. You know what I mean? Like it's unnecessary, because if it's seen more commonly on ground and it's more of a ground dweller, maybe it doesn't need the opposable appendage on the foot anymore. But then again, there is the Sumatran tiger. So, I mean, I don't think it could spend all of its time on the ground. It would need to be able to quickly get out of the way of the tiger and other apex predators.
Could it just be an injured, damaged foot?
It could, or maybe it just, maybe when they walk, I don't know exactly how primate locomotion works, but maybe the divergent toe doesn't, maybe the weight isn't carried so much on it, so it's not going to make that big of an impression.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So most of the weight would be on the outer, and maybe that's kind of what that, because they do walk with the almost like pigeon-toed. Okay. You know what I mean, with the feet pointing in. So maybe that's why, where the weight is more in the front and sides, and it's not necessarily on the toes. No. Or a bad cast. Exactly. Yeah. It could just be a bad cast, because you don't know what the substrate looked like either, too. So maybe it wasn't very malleable or whatever, or pliable. You know what I mean? Where it could leave a deep impression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing I like about this, group, what they're working on is they're categorizing local lore and witnesses accounts of the Orang Pendeks. Mm-hmm. So they're looking at it as a folklore story, mythology story, but they're also looking at it as a realistic creature that is roaming through this area in Sumatra.
Right.
Which, I mean, I think, as somebody was saying, the thought of, most legends, truly have some base in reality. Mm-hmm. They do get changed over the years with cultural, storytelling and stuff like that. And, do they heighten, in certain stories, they heighten the scare factor of the thing that lives in the dark woods.
Right.
To use it to get kids to go to bed quicker. Here they don't really have a scary story that goes along with the Orang Pendeks. It's not abducting children. It's not, hurling rocks down the mountain at people.
Right.
At least from what we found.
Yeah, this seems to be more between the fight or flight. It takes the flight. I mean, most stories that I've seen or that we've read, whatever it is, it just takes off. It doesn't stick around,
Yeah. So, I mean, that also kind of makes me go with the whole Foster's, rule thought process. is it has gotten smaller because of predatory creatures.
Right.
Lack of food, lack of a protein source and stuff like that, and fresh water and habitat. So now it's adapted itself to, I'm going to scurry away as soon as I hear or smell or see one of them,
Right.
one of us, basically. Because it doesn't seem to have any violent tendencies. It's, nothing I found when I was reading and watching stuff about the Orang Pendek. Nobody that I've seen put forth has a story of, oh, it attacked our village and, tried to steal something or steal a child or something like that. And the fact that they're leaving tobacco for it to use.
Yeah.
Which again, that could just be a cultural
Right.
mythology offering to the gods.
Right. I mean, it could be, passing around the peace pipe. You know what I mean? We just want to keep peace with it. You know what I mean? Sort of. I don't know. That's true, Cleo. Yeah, they didn't believe the bush people about the gorilla until they discovered them. So I'm not discrediting tribal folklore at all. I'm not. That's not what we're saying. I in fact, most times I think that it should be taken more seriously because there's more cases than not that these legends end up being true, like the Okapi. There was, the tribal people or villagers, in Africa and stuff like that kept talking about this, creature that kind of looked like a giraffe, it kind of looked like a zebra, it kind of had a little bit of mix of, and it kind of looked like an antelope. It was just this hodgepodge of animals, and nobody believed them. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then all of a sudden the Okapi was discovered. So I take native lore and legend probably more seriously than I would take a lot of stories I hear from what would be considered credible people, I would say, because they live there. They're there 24/7. It's like I said before, when you live in a certain area, like, I'm from Pennsylvania, so I know what's around me. I know what kind of animals are in the woods. I know, for the most part, everything that's been documented. So when I'm out there and I see something that doesn't fit the bill, well, I'm not stupid, it's different. I can't identify it. So I would believe these people that live in the jungles and whatnot, that are deeper into the jungles than more modern or technologically advanced people could go, So, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think the Sumatrans will be sending me or commenting on stuff about how we did not do their story justice.
Yeah, it's true.
Les gets a lot of people.
They could be sitting there on iPads and they'd be like, "Screw you, Squirt."
Yeah, Les makes a lot of people mad when he talks. I don't know why.
I don't know. I don't get it.
But so, let's talk about some of the more recent expeditions. I know there were some that you were kind of talking about with me the other day.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what we talked about before with I guess the Hollywoodization of a lot of these cryptid creatures. Like, you had Josh Gates and the Destination Truth team had gone out to Sumatra, and I think they actually happened upon a tiger, if I'm not mistaken, which was pretty scary. I mean, I wouldn't want to come, and it was at night, and they saw it on a thermal cam. I'm like, that would make me incredibly nervous, like if I was walking along, because if you think of those thermal cams, their ranges aren't that great, and the way the whatever the what do you call it, like the thermal image was being presented, it looked close. So I mean that would scare me. But I don't think they came up with nothing. You know what I mean? They didn't get much out of that episode. Season 1, episode 12 of Monster Quest, they went to Sumatra in search of the Orang Pendek. And I believe Adam Davis was there. I think it was the other guy that you were talking about. Sanderson. Adam Sanderson, yeah. They were there with Monster Quest too, and that's where they found that track that we showed the picture of.
Now it makes me wonder if Adam Sanderson is related to Ivan T. Sanderson.
I don't know. I was wondering that myself too. Now he went there to try and get, I think he's more into photography and videography, and he was trying more so to capture it with trail cams and stuff like that. And I know a lot of people like, oh, well, you know, you put them up, they know when they're in there. This, that. I don't know, because I mean, you do get a lot of animals on those things. You know what I mean? Like you get bear, you get deer, you get, and the bear's sense of smell. Now, granted, supposedly bear go after the trail cams because the casing is petroleum based, and to an ant, petroleum mimics the smell of termite colonies. So they go to check them out because they think it's a termite colony. But I mean, other animal, Josh Gates is a drama queen. Even still, for whatever reason, that dude entertains me. Even though he kind of sounds like Kermit the Frog in some ways. You know, we're going to Sumatra to look for the Orang Pendek. You know, he kind of, no disrespect. I do like the guy. He's totally entertaining. I love his shows, but every time I hear him, I'm waiting for like, howdy ho there. This is Josh Gates with another adventure. But anyway, what was I saying? I totally lost track. Oh yeah, about the camera traps. I don't know. Every time we had put stuff out, we would always get those odd blanks, like we were talking to Linda about. You get the messed up frames, like you'd have a picture of a deer, a picture of a deer, a picture of a deer, then it'd be blank, like a black shot, or a black, and you have all audio. So I don't subscribe to the paranormal but some weird stuff happens. I don't know. Because I'm looking at the image on. Did you hear me?
Yeah, it's kind of choppy again on my end, but
okay, all right. Because both of our, I'm looking at the preview panel and I'm not moving. So I didn't know if I got lost there.
Nope. Now you're starting to clear up a little bit, I think.
All right, good. Yeah, I can see my video looks really, really shoddy compared to yours. I don't know, whatever.
That's because you're on it and I'm on mine.
That's right. But anyway, so and then what the hell is that? Finding Bigfoot went out there too. And who do they meet out there? Do they meet Adam Davis out there? I think they might have met him out there, but I don't know. Again, like as individuals, they may be very good at what they do, but that show is just a joke. Did we lose our feed? Because OSSE, I wish I knew his name or her name. I don't know who it is. He says hello. Or they said hello. But anyway, that's about it. I mean, really, as far as the Orang Pendek goes, okay, good. You can hear us now. Yeah, our connectivity is bad today. I don't know. The show was it was off, so I apologize. It was kind of a frantic show, I guess. But there's really not a lot on the Orang Pendek other than what we kind of covered. I mean, I scoured the internet. I read a bunch of books that I have, and I don't know. There's really not a lot on it. It's very kind of up in the air. And I guess until somebody else goes out there and finds out more information, I mean, it's about all she wrote. I mean, yeah. Do I think that exists? I don't know. Based on some of the findings, I would say based off of a lot of the reports that I've been hearing, it's an orangutan. I mean, it sounds very much ape.
Mhm.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like the Sasquatch is kind of the link between man and ape, but you don't have the divergent toe. You don't have, you know what I mean? Even though the arms are supposedly longer, you know, down more towards the knees and whatnot. But then again, they're also said to go down on all fours. But the shorter legs, the pigeon-toed feet, the divergent toe, the broader arms and shoulders, and the more narrow, smaller lower body. That's all ape.
Yeah, it's very, to me as a Westerner looking at that, to me it would almost seem like they're describing an animal that we call an orangutan.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
that's what we call it. They call it orang pendex.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I'm not saying that there couldn't, like, maybe it is a fourth
Variant.
species or
Yeah.
a subspecies that has developed in that area.
Or whatever they're seeing could just be a deformed orangutan. You know what I mean? It may not be a new creature or a new species. It just might be some sort of a mutation or a deformity that made this orangutan look different. And again, like I said, a lot of times when you have community kind of animal groups, when one is different, it's kind of left to fend for itself. Like take wolves. If a pup's born with any kind of an issue, it's either killed or it's abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it could be a
Kind of,
case here. And I
it's
mean,
kind of
look,
like
think. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
it's kind of like 300. You know, where they would in Sparta they would get rid of the babies that they didn't deem
Worthy, yeah, that
worthy of
weren't
it. Yeah,
strong or whatever, or didn't fit the mold. Yeah, that's
yeah.
true. I mean, I think about all the deforestation. I mean, the orangutan habitat is almost gone,
Mm.
you know, and could it be, you know, something from the environment, a toxin, a poison, or something that kind of, you know, were given birth defects or something like that? But then again, now that they're saying that these reports go back 100 years, so I don't know. But again, 100 years really isn't that long ago.
No, and I mean, 100 years ago, you would have some industrial stuff going on already in that area, developmental, you know, development and stuff like that. So maybe it was something used back then that caused the defects, and the defects have just kind of become the genetic code for normal for a
Right,
certain troop or whatever of orangutan.
right. Yeah, I don't know. I would say if something does exist, it's either a fourth variant or subspecies, or possibly the Homo floresiensis.
Yeah. Which I think sometimes that might be a, if I'm going to go strictly with the, you know, cryptozoology end of it, I'm probably going to lean towards that compared
Mhm.
to, you know, it's an orangutan. But
Yeah,
looking at it just as a person looking at story and cultural story and folklore, it kind of just sounds like it could just be a yet undiscovered by modern science variant.
right, right,
You know, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying there could just be a more reasonable explanation. And I mean, let's face it, if they find that it is a subspecies or a fourth variant, it's going to be named the Orang Pendek.
right, right,
Yeah, so that's it'll finally be categorized and classified, you know, classed and all that. So yeah, it's interesting at least. I mean, it's another story of some human, you know, ancestor running around out there, or possible ancestor. I don't want to offend anybody's beliefs,
Yeah.
Running around out there, or a separate line running around out there that kind of has some features that kind of fit close to us, kind of fit close to the ape, the primate end of it. So it's always interesting. I mean, again, I enjoy history and I enjoy the folklore of all this.
Yeah.
It's another culture's folklore on something that dwells in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it was interesting to read about and do some research on. I will never get to Sumatra. I will drink their coffee, though. But
yeah, no, it would be kind of cool to go out there and check it out. If we had the chance, hell yeah, I'd go. But I mean, the likelihood of that is slim to none. So, and unfortunately, in this category, especially, well, in any category that involves us going to a different part of the world, we're armchair researchers. But when it comes to the North American Sasquatch or anything paranormal, we're more boots on the ground. And to answer OSSE, I don't know your name. I wish I knew your name. But you had asked the question, are we brothers? We're brothers from other mothers, but, we may not be blood brothers, but we are definitely, we consider each other family. And you had asked, have we ever had close face-to-face encounters with a Sasquatch? No. But if you go back and listen to our show, which I think you listened to, I think you remember you commenting on there, Squatch on the Farm, that was 3 shows ago. The experiences we talk about there is about as close as we got. So, unfortunately, no, I have not ever seen one. I wish. I thought I got close, but nothing yet. I've smelled things that I haven't smelled before, like we talked about. Now you said, Chad, about the rotten egg. What I smelled the one day, and actually I think Leslie smelled it the one time too when we were hiking out. There's 3 areas that I put a lot of focus into that are very close to my house, and 2 of the areas I've found some interesting things, but the smell is what it was just bizarre. It was, I'm telling you, it was a mix between just really rank BO, like an eggy smell, like a sulfury smell, and like just like a stinky dog. I mean, that's the best I could tell you. And you had a spider or something on your shoulder? Cleo said she saw a spider or something on your left shoulder. No kidding.
Probably a fly. There was one buzzing me. I caught it earlier and threw it out that way, but I wouldn't doubt it. I mean,
Cleo, you cut me off in the middle of my story there. See, my ADD kicked in. I was like, what'd you say? A squirrel. But yeah, I mean, as far as no, we've never physically seen one. Smelled something really stinky in a couple of areas. And it's weird too, because every time I get the smell, like I'm not consciously thinking about it, but I was like, oh man, that smells. And I always get this weird, like, almost like that sixth sense where like the hair stands up on your neck and you're like, is something watching me? Now, again, I don't know if it's because I smelled it and I'm like instantly thinking, oh, well, it must be a Bigfoot because it's the Bigfoot smell or what they say, and then I just, my brain clicks and I think, okay, am I being watched? I don't know, but I don't know.
I usually go with the motto of he who smelt it dealt it.
So. Or a fox smells its own hole, right?
Yeah. Words to live by.
OSSE, you say that you have an audio recording from West Virginia. Can you email that to me at encounters@explorersgroup.com? I would love to hear that. And if you go on to www.explorersgroup.com and go under evidence, we have an audio recording that I recorded from the farm that I had lived on. Compare it. I'd like to compare yours to what I have and see if the recordings are close. So that could be kind of cool, kind of interesting to see. Because, I mean, West Virginia ain't that far away.
Yeah, I mean, mountains and all that run
All across all up the East Coast.
Yeah, the Appalachia.
Thank you. Yeah, you could either PM us or I don't know. You could get in touch with us either through email or PM us on Facebook, and you could talk to us about that. No problem. So, anyways, we're rambling now.
Yeah.
I said, go ahead. I was gonna say there's not much else about the Orang Pendek, so Chad, take us out.
Yeah. I'd like to thank my co-host Les for doing another great show tonight. The Explorers would also like to thank you guys, the audience, for coming along on the trip here tonight. Les, you got anything?
No, not really. I just thank you, as always, brother, for taking the ride here with me. Thank you, like Chad said. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Like always, we totally appreciate you guys. We definitely are getting some regulars on the show, and thank you. Just thank you so much. We love doing this, for everyone, and it's cool. The interaction is fantastic because we're learning so much more as we talk to you all, and we try and provide information. Like we said, we try and make it educational, and the stories that we hear from you all and whatnot, it makes the experience so much greater. So thank you so much. You guys are great. And I guess to the usual agenda, if you want to get in touch with us, share an encounter, share a story, provide a show topic, anything like that, you can get in touch with us on the Contact Us page at www.explorersgroup.com. You can contact us on Twitter @ExplorersGroup or on Facebook, facebook.com/Explorers. We're on Instagram and we're on iTunes and a few others that don't generate shit, so don't worry about it. But we try and go everywhere. So yeah, thank you for we are glad that you enjoy listening to us. So on that note, Chad, good night, brother. Everybody, good night, and thanks for tuning in.